Good afternoon again and welcome. We have two linked sessions. The session after me is moderated by Harsha, and in these two sessions, we are looking at digital transformation. We are looking at digital transformation from a big business point of view. We have MAS, we have John Keells IT, Dialog, and Nations Trust Bank. And the session following this is perfectly aligned because it discusses digital transformation or the digital disruption from a startup point of view, more or less, right? The session is structured quite in terms of two keynote speeches, followed by a panel discussion. Let's aim to keep this very conversational. Please feel free to get involved. You can do this two ways. Pull out the app, post your questions, post them early. And also, there is a mini poll out there. So during the discussion, see if you would like to answer that from your point of view, your company's point of view. And that'll examine, that'll ask you about digital transformation and how you're placed around that. So we're going to start with two keynote speeches, and I will ask Ramesh from John Keells IT to go first.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The next 20 minutes, I am probably going to spend some time not talking too much about John Keells or the companies that we deal with, but the learnings that probably we have internalized in the transformation journey, which could be useful to anyone who's going to take this journey on. And probably I will leave it to Shamindra to take on the specifics during the panel. So my theme is simplicity, the transformative imperative. Because I feel today digital has been made so complex. A lot of people are afraid to even talk about digital transformation because they think it's too complex for me. So I think at the onset, I just want to set the context for digital. So when you talk of digital, I think all of us have to have a context, right? So if you take Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan context is we got 21 million people, right? But if you really take a digital twin of Sri Lanka today, we got about 6 million people who are using social media and internet. But does that confine us to the 6 million? No, because digital is boundaryless, right? So if we want to acquire customers beyond Sri Lankan context, technology is the platform. I think the last panel I walked in time when Peter was kind of trying to crucify Harsha for policy decisions. But I think it's up to us stop blaming politicians and taking probably a forward-looking step. And if we want to do that, digital is the platform where we could conquer the world, because it's not limited by the shores of Sri Lanka or physical boundaries. Having said that, we also talk of inclusive growth. So today, if you look at digital and digital payments, we are talking about only 1 million Sri Lankans having access to credit cards. And of that 1 million, only 50% are using online or at least doing online payments, right? So which is a huge handicap from a Sri Lankan context in terms of a huge barrier as to why we can't progress commerce further. So while this is the context from a Sri Lankan perspective, I just want to share a video which gives you the global context in terms of where the world is going, and there could be a lot more options for us to leapfrog using these technologies as well. it's all about change, right? So if you look at, if we give it, or acknowledge the fact that our digital twin of Sri Lanka is only 6 million deep, do we just leave it at that, or we could do something more? So today, I think when Apple invented iPhone, you could have seen the adoption of mobile phone kind of exponentially grew. So today, AI has the same potential in terms of bringing native language, natural speech into reality, in taking the 6 million digital footprint of Sri Lanka to even 20 million. So if that happens, what would be the digital footprint of your organization? So my digital footprint is about 15,000 LinkedIn users, 2,000 Facebook users, maybe 2,000 Twitter. So if you really look at each of your employees in your organization and their digital footprint, and if you kind of take a cumulative effect of that, what would be the digital footprint of your own organization? How many of you assessed your digital footprint? What's your reach digitally? So my first degree of connections on LinkedIn is about 15,000. My second degree of connection is 800,000. My third degree of connection is 24 million. Where on earth would you get that exponential reach other than digital? And would we be wise to disregard such a platform? So imagine the 6 million digital footprint grows to 20 million, and each of those digital users ask you this as a business: I want what I want when I want it. Are you today able to fulfill that proposition? So if you don't, you are leaving room for an opportunity as well as a threat for your organization, because someone else can fulfill that. So which would lead to my next contention, that if you really want to map a user, I know there are about 500 people here, but who can really say that we would have significant information about each of you to profile you and say, you are so and so, this is what you like, this is what you don't like, right? If you look at best, most of our organizations have transactional information. And if you pay cash, we wouldn't even have an address for you. If you pay by credit card or maybe other means, we would have some details about you. So loyalty in terms of touch points, in terms of virtual identity, creates a unique perspective through social media, like linking to Facebook's LinkedIn, gives you a social context, gives us a bigger context to profile you better and to serve you better. So if, as I said, if I want what I want when I want it, if I'm a vegan, if say someone sends me a promotion on sausages, would I like it? So how do I personalize what I want? Right. So this is an ad from Nutella in terms of personalizing Nutella for each and every one of you, right? Do we have the capability and the data to personalize? Right. At best, we do kind of mass marketing, right? So where does personalization take us in the digital world? So the next thing that I wanted to emphasize is, now, if you want to go to a bank, you want to go to a supermarket, or if you want to go anywhere else, what's the first point of friction? It's finding a car park, right? So once you get a car park, probably you will do everything else. So Amazon Go obviously looks at all of these data points and looks at points of friction, and is trying to see digitally, how can I create better ecosystems to take the friction out of it. Gone are the days where Porter's theory of linear value chains and backward integration and forward integration are dead, right? Today we are talking about value ecosystem. Since the next panel has Kapruka and this panel has FriMi, I was just saying, if I logged in to Kapruka, ordered something, paid through FriMi, and got it delivered through PickMe, today I can assemble the value ecosystem what I want when I want it. No one determines how the item is getting purchased or delivered to me. I determine that as a user. Today the power of digital is that, right? You could concentrate on your core and then deliver value across.
Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change, or are you being driven by it? Disruption has become the new normal. With change, it's always gradually, then suddenly, well, things really have stopped happening gradually. This change is exponential. Everything that used to be dumb and disconnected is now wired and intelligent. Cars, cities, ports, farms, even our bodies will be wired with sensors and will talk to each other. These game changers are also combinatorial. They amplify each other, creating a perfect storm of change. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence and deep learning, which fuels robotics. However, anything that cannot be digitized or automated will become extremely valuable. Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future, because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. Yes, robots and software will do some of our work, but this will allow us to focus on things that cannot be automated. To imagine change squared, you've got to start engaging more with what might be, not just with what is. Immerse yourself in the immediate future, 5 to 7 years out from today. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insights and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business model. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case, not single improvements, but complete transformations, not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The future doesn't just happen. The future gets happened. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here.
So digital is an imperative today, right? So given that fact, if we want to really adopt digital, the most challenging thing is to simplify things, right? So our journey at John Keells and a couple of the customers that we work in the regional context, including bigger airlines, what we see is you got to reimagine your business in the digital world, right? Where a lot of us are inhibited by rules of engagement on a physical world, on a linear value chain, and we tend to forget the potential digital brings in terms of creating new opportunities for ourselves, right? So I could just allude to a couple of the things that we are doing, even at John, like the latest product that we launched for homes, Trizen, which is the first smart home of its kind. Why on earth would we do something like that? Because if you look at the demographics of a home buyer is changing. The demographics of a future dweller is going to be different. He may not even own a car with all these MRTs and stuff coming into play. So you would want convenience at the fingertips, right? You would want automation which gives them livelihood, a better grip. So to do that, we also need smarter infrastructures. The traditional way we've been managing infrastructures by buying hardware, setting up our own, will not scale out in terms of what the digital world requires, right? So that's the reason you will see cloud, all these cloud offerings bringing traction, because it's an easier way for us to adapt and embrace the digital world and grow, because you can't predict the scale out the digital world will bring in terms of data. So what is the iterative cycle when you get into the digital world that you would do? You will obviously have a discovery phase, right? When you understand a customer comes to your supermarket every 1 week, buys 10 items, you have the opportunity to push a dynamic shopping list to the shopper. You could even predict at what time a car park could be free for him to come and shop freely with less friction. You could pack and deliver stuff to his home if that is his preference. So the options are in abundance. But what would suit you would be dependent on your business case and the profile of your customer. So the ultimate rule in digital is to drive engagement, right? If you have good experience, you'll come back. If you have bad experience, you won't, right? So as much data point as you have to be able to predict the behavior of a user, that you're on a winning streak. And optimize this whole thing on iterative cycle based on yourworld.com. So in the interest of time, I'll probably rush through the rest of the slides because I'm going to overshot my time limit. So these are potentially learnings from John Keells and the other customers we dealt with. So what are critical success factors? So I've divided into kind of 3 compartments, right? Obviously, having a digital vision and a leadership is of prime, right? Because you need to have a leadership who buys into digital and understand why it's important. And you got to empower and enable employees. You can't have an organization which doesn't allow people to use internet and Facebook and social media and try to have digital in an organization, right? You got to have inclusive employees who are part of a digital ecosystem, who are using digital on a day-to-day basis. And you got to create this digerati culture. This is something what you'll find in Google, right? You come at any time you want. It's like home. You promote creativity and you give them the breathing space to do what they want. And incubate digital skills like STEMs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, like the data science thing that they were talking about in the earlier panel, which becomes important to correlate data and get meaningful insights from data that you might have. And build smart infrastructures, which I alluded to earlier, because you need to have your infrastructure which can gear up in terms of digital. Today, for example, FriMi wanted to integrate to a supermarket. We were able to do that in about a week, right? Because we had an infrastructure which was able to integrate that ASAP. Today, if Keells Super wants to deliver items to their shoppers through PickMe, can I integrate PickMe into my core system, right? That's having smart infrastructures. I should be able to do that in a week or 2. I can't be taking months to say, okay, I'll do that, but it'll take about 6 to 12 months. Then we lost the battle. And obviously, data governance and data is of prime. And you've got to promote experimentation. Fear of failure, promoting failure is important for a digital context because a lot of the time we're trying new things, and we need breathing space for it. And obviously, building ecosystems, better products and stuff. So next thing is in terms of approach. I'm not saying you've got to follow this linearly, but there are 3 pillars that you could crack. Transform experiences, you could transform operations, and you could transform business models. A lot of the time, people associate digital to transform business models like Airbnb and the Ubers of the world. It need not, right? Simply taking friction out of your current systems through technology is also digital, right? So I think a lot of the organizations might look at these similar in a parallel fashion, but you could also look at based on your maturity and your capabilities on a linear fashion as well. So my final slide, this is few things that we've done internally. I just kind of captured in a video. So that concludes my presentation. I'll leave this with a parting thought. I think I probably overrun my time by about 5 minutes, so Jehan might have to take a little bit lesser. Thanks for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Ramesh. Ramesh, as you walk in, we kind of have a fuzzy idea about what John Keells IT is, right? You showed us some projects, but you showed us some of your products, but you are a supplier to some of the world's leading airlines and airports?
Yep.
You can't name them, but I'm thinking they may be based in the Middle East.
Middle East, yeah.
Yeah, there's like a few big airlines and airports in the Middle East, like these mega hubs, like, you know, the Emirates of the world. You're not saying this, but the Qatars of the world.
Emirates, yeah, but
yeah.
Something close.
Something close, the Qatars of the world, the Etihads of the world. Okay, right. Jehan's from a company we know that started in by sewing clothes, right? You make apparel, ready-made clothes, right? But you're going to tell us that you're doing a lot more than that, right? Okay, up to you, Jehan.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to get everyone down to from the cloud to the ground and talk about from buzz to actually getting it done, right? I'm sure all of us are caught in this whole hype. Everyone thinks that they've done something about this, they're doing it, or they want to do it. But actually, it's easier said than done. So for us at MAS, technology and digital is just a means of achieving our strategic imperatives. So that's the way that we look at it. So if you look at our business, we are predominantly a B2B manufacturing business. And someone would argue saying that, what have we got to do with digital? Because everything that Ramesh mentioned was centric around a consumer. And if you're a B2B business, what have we got to do this? So I think the first piece is actually getting out of the denial. If you feel that your organization has nothing to do with digital and it's not going to get impacted at all. For us, yes, we are a predominant B2B manufacturer, but for these kind of reasons, we just can't ignore the impact that digital is doing in our industry. So if you look at the emergence of micro multinationals, there are these startups accounting to just less than 40% in the apparel landscape. Maybe the 50% is kind of dominated by the big labels and brands, but there is still a portion of startups that are dominating the apparel and fashion space as well. And the funny thing is, they start global. They don't start with, setting up a shop up the street and then being regional and then going global. So we see the emergence of these micro multinationals. Then also we see the popularity of e-com marketplaces. They are pulling all the traffic from the high street into the virtual world. And these obviously have been started by the tech people. And they think that data can revolutionize apparel. So they're going into the extent of saying even we can design what you think you want to wear, right? So there is that lot that we need to deal with as well. And as a result of that, there is an increased frequency of product releases. So I know it might not resonate for us in this part of the world, but in where the western parts of the world, there is a kind of a seasonality, and everything like happens for a season. But now, because these players are operating in the virtual world, there is no constraint of space. So all that what they want to do is just put a wide variety and a range of products, and they want to make the consumer the jury whether they like the product or not, right? So there is that aspect to it as well. And then again, I think Ramesh touched a bit about experiential retail and omnichannel. And The last piece, which is kind of challenging us, is everyone wants to wear something they think that they are the only person who is wearing. So maybe it's from a fit point of view, or maybe it's kind of from an aesthetic point of view as well. So personalization and customization is also kind of a big piece. And all these things are happening thousands of miles away from where we are. And that's why we can't ignore all what is happening, because it has a clear impact in terms of what we do. So in terms of our game plan, we took time to understand where our vulnerabilities are, as well as where are the opportunities for us to capture more value based on what I just mentioned before. So we looked at it through two lenses. One, maybe we just look through a lens of we're a manufacturer. So therefore, we need to make sure that we drive digital to be a better manufacturer. So we drive digital to our core. Because at the end of the day, all the hype that Ramesh spoke about, someone has to fund it, right? So we need to make sure that digital is driven to the core as well, so that that engine operates well. But while doing that, we also need to make sure that we look through a lens that we are playing in the entire value stream of fashion, and what are the opportunities that technology enables us to play in the entire value stream. So not only just as a manufacturer. So those are the kind of two lenses that we decided to see through. So based on that, the key focus areas that we want to decide was, let's make sure that it's an impactful and a small set of areas that we would want to play. So like I mentioned, in terms of driving it to our core, so we are looking at the opportunities that technology can bring in to drive our productivity high. How do we optimize our resources? How do we reduce the lead time? Because all these would kind of help to weather all the other trends that are happening that I mentioned in the previous slide as well. And obviously quality. Technology can play a big role in terms of making sure that we play to the right quality. Also, when a brand sells online, we see an opportunity that we can service them just beyond manufacturing. Because in theory, if someone is operating online, what do they need to sell? They only need a picture to sell. But in traditional retail, you need at least 5 things of that product hanging on the wall so that one person comes and picks one out. But if people are moving onto an e-commerce landscape, all you need is a picture. But still, I think the apparel manufacturing supply chain is forcing them to take the traditional route because we are not agile enough or we are not fast enough. So we feel that as an opportunity, and we want to make sure that we will enable our customers to sell things online without having their products sitting in their warehouses. So we've come up with a model where we could directly deliver to our consumer. Sorry, it's not our consumer, it's our customer's customer, which is the end consumer. Because traditionally, we would only just deliver to their warehouses. So by doing these kind of stuff, we are hitting most of the challenges that we kind of mentioned before. Most of the brands that we work now in the digital space are willing to share a lot of data. So then the question is, okay, what do we do? But we feel there is a massive opportunity to work with that data, use technology, and capture more value, again, beyond manufacturing. So the key piece that we are always trying to focus on is we are more than a manufacturer, and there is room to capture beyond manufacturing, because all our customers want us is that we will share the data, but can you please be agile? Can you please be fast and make sure that the product that you're churning out is fresh in terms of styling and on trend? Also, for the last 30 years, we have acquired so much of experiences and knowledge, and we feel digital technology would help us monetize that experience in some form as well. So there is another camp that we're working on, is that set of, that team is focusing on how we actually build digital platforms in order to kind of democratize our knowledge that we built in the last 30 years. The last piece here is about digital has enabled manufacturers like us to go directly to the consumer. So this is with our own product. We have a kind of innovation engine that is running within MAS called Twinery, and that is generating products which are full of function and features. So traditionally, we would have given that to one of our B2B customers to say, here you go, there's a high-performing fabric, or there's a or there's this feature that we can enable in your apparel. You could take it and take it to market. But 10 years ago, we couldn't do that. Well, we could, but if we invest in the high street, in the markets that we are playing, and go and sell them. But today, because of digital technology, we are enabled to actually go to market, and that is our first preferred route in taking our innovation products into market. And that kind of gives us a good test bed as well, because without investing in brick and mortar, you can easily use this channel to test the product to see whether actually it's hitting the sweet spot of what the customers want. So broadly, talking about digital, this is the kind of focus area that we are looking at. Meaning, we want to make sure that our core is strengthened, as well as we want to look at opportunities where we can be beyond a manufacturer. But how do we get it done? Right? Someone has to start somewhere. And it took us a couple of years as well to kind of figure out what we're going to do. The natural tendency is you just start a project. Right? But then we realized starting a project is not going to work. First, we need to understand what are those vulnerabilities that we will have as an organization, and where are the opportunities that we can capture as well. So I think we need to move away from a list of projects and make sure that there is a compelling vision that is there for the organization. Because if you don't have a compelling vision, what can technology do, right? So that was our starting point. Plus, we also had a good sponsorship from our leadership, and the whole initiative is kind of driven by the leadership as well. The other piece that was important for us is in terms of purpose. If the purpose is that strong, we want to make sure that someone wakes up in the morning thinking about these things as well. And that kind of created the role that I'm playing currently as the Chief Digital Officer. Different to the Chief Information Officer. Now, someone would say, why do you need two people to do this, right? But I think that's a big unlock there, because someone focuses on creating that value, and one focuses on making sure that your operations are running the way that they need to operate as well. So nothing is inferior or superior. They're both important, but they both need proper mind time. So that's one of the big changes that we've done as well. So talking about talent, when we said that let's create this function to drive this thing through, everyone around the board was saying you need to get some good engineers, right? But then when we looked around, we said, no, it's not going to cut this. You need people with a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. So you need different skills there. Then you need people who get convinced. So we call them evangelists. So actually we've changed the JDs, the titles, without calling them a business analyst or a systems analyst, we call them evangelists. Because the role of the evangelist, as you would know, is to preach and convert. So the job role of that person is actually make sure that they show the art of the possible of technology and make sure that we make it mainstream, right? So it's important to make sure that the talent that you're bringing in is not just engineering talent. Yes, we need engineering talent as well, but there are different capabilities. So we are also acquiring knowledge in terms of cross-border trade. How do we do cross-border e-commerce? So that is a completely different skill set that you wouldn't find in an engineering background. The next piece is the mindset. Now, yes, you can have a compelling vision, but if you don't make sure that it is kind of proliferated to the rest of the organization and help them understand the role that they play in that, you're going to miss something out. Because yes, you can go around the digital side of things, but end of the day, at least in the business that we are in, something has to get physically sown. And that is the analog part of our business. And I don't think in the near future that will ever be digital. People might be arguing, saying, yeah, you can have 3D printing. But if you have cracked it, just let us know. Because there's still going to be an analog part of our business, but you need to make sure that for the digital part to work, you need to have this working together. And also the other piece is, it's not only about problem solving, so your mindset should not be, so what is the problem? What are we trying to solve? So yes, that is important, but then also you should look at what's the opportunity that we can unlock as well. Because sometimes technology is not only about problem solving. It should be an opportunity to unlock as well. So the mindset piece is an important piece that we need to put in place. More than, in addition to having your team in place that is going to drive this as well. But the other piece I think Ramesh touched about in terms of mindset as well is it's about it's okay to fail. But we kind of complement that with a kind of an experimental ethos. And we also ensure that there's a pot of money to try things. Because if you don't try things, you won't be able to show what kind of value it's going to bring. Because like I said, it's all hyped up. Huh? So if someone is going to come and sell you, I will get AI to give your next sales forecast, would you buy it? The first thing that you would say is, can you just show me that I'm going to get the next month's forecast or next year's forecast right? So that's why the whole experimental ethos is important. Because if not, it's not going to work. And the most important piece in the experimental ethos is if it doesn't work, just let it go. Don't get emotionally attached to it. So if there are any shareholders sitting in this room, that money might go down the drain. And you should be okay with it. Because if you don't, you will be driving the wrong behavior. So that experimental ethos and how you actually enable that is going to be quite important. The other piece that we've learned is that we just can't do it all by ourselves. You need to make sure that your teams are capable to look around and work in collaboration with the ecosystem of tech partners as well as your supply chain partners and your sales partners as well. Because anything that you do cannot be done in isolation. So that's a kind of an important piece. And when you do that, you could also spot certain opportunities where you would even invest in it as an organization, because you feel that this particular startup in the tech world has cracked something that is really important for our industry. And we've taken the approach of actually investing in them as well, because then we could capture value, not only by manufacturing and enabling the manufacturing piece, but also monetizing that kind of technology with the rest of the industry. Why not? And the final piece, in terms of getting it done, is regulation. When you sometimes come up with a business model, the first thing that your team is going to come and tell you is, oh, that cannot be done, because the regulatory framework doesn't allow us to do that. And it's fair enough, because in our industry, most of the regulation is around a bulk B2B manufacturing relationship with the external world, and all the regulation is framed around those things. But what we've learned is, if you go to the authorities with a compelling vision, not only for your company, for the industry as well as for the country, I'm sure all those regulations could be aligned to the new way of working, and we've done that as well. So for example, when we wanted to do our B2C shipments, the documentation cost was higher than the courier cost and the product cost. So then we went and said, it's not going to work. So help us. We still keep track of all what's happening, but let's just rework the whole process so that it makes commercial sense for us to do this kind of stuff. But if you stopped saying, no, you can't do that, you will never be able to create that kind of business model. So that piece is also an important piece of what we've kind of done. So before we go into the panel discussion, just to conclude, don't get caught up too much in the hype. So if there are lawyers and accountants around, I think your jobs are still safe because AI is not going to take over your job yet, right? Maybe after you retire, the next generation, there might be an issue there. So don't get too much caught up in the hype because there is still tech that is mainstream that you can start using. Because we always jump onto that next best thing, forgetting there is so much of technology that you are not even using, right? So people are asking me, what are you doing with blockchain? Isn't that the big thing to do? And I said, I'm not doing anything with blockchain because there are so many other things that I need to deal with, right? When blockchain is mainstream, maybe I will look at it, right? So that is a big piece. There's mainstream technology you can use right now. So don't just jump into something that is hyped up too much. The compelling purpose is key. Don't start with the technology. We tried doing that, and then we kind of pivoted back to going back to the main purpose of what it is. And don't delegate it. I think you should drive it. So we have all leaders within this, in this room as well, so make sure that you drive that. Because if you don't support to kickstart that journey, it's not going to happen. So you just can't delegate it. So that's why, from MS Holdings' point of view, our chairman is running this initiative. And that kind of gives the right message in terms of the importance of what it is. And don't forget to create an environment where you have that experimental ethos. I think that's a big piece as well. Because if you don't create, and if you don't create the funding around it as well, you will never try things. And if you never try things, you're never going to get the budget approved in terms of doing that. And my final words would be, you wouldn't know what you don't know until you actually try it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jehan. I was intrigued. You talked about B2C shipments. So you're shipping to customers?
Yes.
Hypothetically, you could be shipping to an Amazon customer from Sri Lanka.
So that's exactly what we're doing. So we have one of our brands who's based in the US, and they're shipping to about more than 100 countries. The previous model was we used to ship everything into their warehouse in the US, and they would ship globally from the warehouse from there. And we felt that there's an opportunity for us to set up shop here and do the fulfillment from here. So you see the amount of value that is being created plus captured to the country and as well as to the organization. Because all those dollars that were spent in the US are now being spent with a warehouse provider in Sri Lanka, as well as spent with a courier provider in Sri Lanka as well. So we are shipping, if an Australian consumer buys anything from this brand, the fulfillment is done from us from Katunayaka.
So a brand that's serving 100 countries must be as big as Amazon. You can't tell me that, though. You can't confirm that, right? Reina, Reina and Nazeem are panelists. I'll ask Reina to start with a few comments. If you want to set the agenda for what the panel may discuss, please take a few minutes and set the agenda.
Yeah, good afternoon. Very happy to be here, and amazing presentations. Thanks, I learned a lot. I think what comes across in both of the presentations is very clearly there is not a simple answer. I think that is what I think we can all take away. I've been fairly privileged to work in different countries, different organizations in the West, in the US, in Europe, in India most recently, and now I'm very happy to be here. And what I see is very much we shouldn't simplify if we talk about digital transformation. That is not a very easy, it's actually a very difficult thing to do. And I think most of the dimensions that you have set out is just what sticks in the mind. When I look at digital transformation in all of these places that I mentioned, I think in my mental mind, there's a canvas where I see the customer, I see the partner. There's many partners typically that we have as companies. I see the employee, and I see the shareholder, right? Either a public or a private company, anyone has basically people that have a vested interest. So in that canvas of stakeholders, there's a couple of concrete actions that I see that need to be done in order to really embrace the power of digital. And I can't go through all of them because, again, there's not a simple answer. Just complementing to what I saw in the presentations, many of the things I absolutely would have mentioned as well. In addition, I see there is a kind of what I call an atomization of organizations, and there's almost like an atomization across. What I mean with that, we see that more and more organizations, and Dialog is one of them, start to really dissolve monolithic hierarchical organizations and cast them into a much more project-based, cross-functional, and small team setup. All of these teams are working within the team, obviously, against a certain objective and key result, OKR. However, these teams also work together. So it's an atomization within the organization, which in return also creates an ecosystem of collaboration. And that collaboration of team that we have, by the way, spans across the organizational boundary with the partners as well. So I do see more and more that partners that we have, especially strategic partners, become part of the wider ecosystem of how we work. The second piece, each of these teams, each of these agile teams, and they're typically, what Jeff Bezos says, not bigger than to be fed by 2 pizzas at a lunch. So that means about 7, 10 people, depending upon how hungry the people are. And each of these teams is working in what we have heard in a very agile, sprint-based manner. So I don't wait until 3 months. I don't wait until 6 months. I have a major delivery that I get. Can be an IT delivery, can be a process delivery, can be any kind of a product that I want. I want to see a concept in 2 weeks. I want to have my hands on a prototype in 4 weeks. And I want to be able to give feedback as a top manager within days. So I see that is a whole opportunity in this atomization and collaboration for all of us to get much more involved, which, by the way, links back to the customer intimacy that also we heard. We can't sit and develop something and think it will work. We have to listen to the customer in a continuous manner. Day and night, I need to see what is the experience, I need to read it from my data, and I need to cast it back into my development, into my process, or into my service. So at the center of this ecosystem, where I see this atomization, there's an IT infrastructure. The IT infrastructure is largely built around analytics and making use, generating insights, and getting actions out of data. And I think that's easier said than done. Again, there's not a simple answer when people talk about big data, when people talk about microservices-based containerized IT infrastructure. To actually do it has taken us as Dialog years. I wouldn't even say we are there, but we are fairly advanced, what I see at the architecture that we have, where we can develop small functions which become part of a product, and I can reuse those functions for another product rather than redeveloping the entire piece again. I become much more resilient against changes that happen in the customer requirements or in the marketplace or by regulation because I have those atoms in my IT as well. So again, it's this notion about atomization and collaboration that I see also on the IT side, which is very helpful. It gives us a lot of resilience and speed to market. And at the center of all this, there's a data hub. I call it data lake, whereby, again, easier said than done. How many of you have all your data in one place? I really would like to see how many there are. Even I'm doubtful if I would put up my hand. We are getting there. But you have to realize that you have so much information in your organization. Have you unlocked the availability of that data so that you can view on your customer in a 360-degree perspective? Have you unlocked all the log data, which is called dark data, which typically is 80 to 90% of all the data we have? Or is it sitting in some server hidden in some data center? I think most of us have not even started to unlock the power of data, which starts with getting the right information into one place, whereby I can then two things. One is I can visualize the relevant data to the relevant people in a real-time manner. Just to get the direct access of the data to the right people in my organization is a huge power, and there's amazing tools that you can just get for free or you can get for very little money to unlock the visualization power, because when you see the data, you can already see a lot of things that are going right and maybe also some things that are going wrong. The second piece, obviously, is the modeling. Now, for the modeling, we have discussed this morning, and also now we need skills. But I can say, don't get too much frightened. There are more and more tools out there which actually start to disrupt the data scientist himself. There are tools out there which I pretty much can basically entrust my data, and I can get the tool itself to come up with a model which I can in turn use for product recommendation, in our case for the network rollout, in our case for the improvement of the customer service. So don't get too shied away by saying that we don't have the skills. Yes, you need a few good people, no question, but don't wait for it. There are tools, more and more tools, which help you to not only visualize, but to also make use of the data. So just to complement a few of the things that we have heard, not an easy answer, but huge opportunity, not only big companies, because we have been introduced as big companies, I would say even small, especially small companies, as atoms in that ecosystem, have huge opportunities to excel in a digital world.
Thanks, Reina. Thanks for that. Nazeem is from Nations Trust Bank, and he's head of an application, of a mobile application called FriMi. I'm not sure how many here in the audience know FriMi or have used FriMi. There you go. Can you tell us a bit about what this is, Nazeem?
Shamindra, firstly, thank you for inviting me. To give you a short answer, FriMi is your bank account. So if I'm to elaborate on the functionality and what FriMi is all about, basically what we've done is, we've got your bank account, wrapped into it payments and other functionality, and given you an app-based banking partnership product that allows you to do all your day-to-day needs. Of course, we're at the initial stages. We're looking to expand our functionality and so on. So to answer you, we are very simply your bank account.
Right, but you also appear, at least in terms of an experience, in terms of a customer sort of looking at the app, you appear a little less uptight than you would expect a bank to be. Is that by design? How does that happen?
So I had to take a step back and take you through what really had taken place over the last few years. So looking back and looking at Nations Trust Bank, it's a pretty young bank in the overall context of things. Less than 20 years, mid-sized, been innovative, launched extended banking hours some years back and so on. So they've also done very well with some of the products like American Express. They made it one of the dominant card brands in the country. So the thinking behind it is basically, how do you grow exponentially from here? So I think that's where the senior leadership of Nations Trust Bank, went into FriMi. So in this journey, they made a couple of interesting choices. Firstly, conceptualizing it, and then how do you actually take it to market and actually run it? So the leadership actually made this choice of getting FriMi or letting it run independently to enable it to build its own culture, bring in fresh thinking into it, be innovative, and so on. So this is what FriMi is today.
Right. Okay. We'll come back. We'll talk a bit more about what you're doing with the product and how traction has been. Right. We are also opening this out for questions. There's already a few on the app. I'd really encourage you to put many more. We'll keep this as interactive as possible and much more time for your question. Okay, I'll start with a question. Question for you, Ramesh. Do you think Sri Lankan organizations are ready to use AI for their businesses? Most of our business organizations don't have enough data. Is that true about data? And does AI have, is AI the next step from data?
I think it's look at from a adoption point of view, because now, say for example, now at John Keells, I've just showed the app called Chess. So we're kind of using AI and cognitivity for employees to apply for leave, right? Because now say, otherwise applying for leave is a very, very tedious task. Right? You need to know your rules, you need to kind of know whether you're going to apply annual, this thing. So it's about looking at taking friction out of the system, right? I did mention that our digital footprint is about 6 million, but today imagine if you go and put a Amazon Echo or a Cortana at home and ask your parents to talk to it, they might as well. That if you give them a mobile phone and say use this app, they're not going to. So adoption in terms of AI, cognitive science is much more intuitive, right? Because it's a high lineage towards natural language and speech, right? So I think that's where I feel a bigger use case would be there. But obviously in artificial intelligence, data science, it's another aspect of AI, which probably the question is alluding to. So we do have data sets, like probably Reina mentioned, we have a lot of data sets in silos. We don't have correlation, right? So that's where I think the world is moving. That's where I think when at John Keells, we are doing a lot of plumbing in terms of building that correlation, building the data warehouse, the data lake, so that you will have a 360 picture of the customer.
Okay, there's also one for you.
Can I add one? Just because, again, we try on this panel to bring it down, all of us, to a concrete level. I think this data analytics, if I look at it, kind of what we really do, it is nothing else than pattern recognition. I think if we summarize what is data analytics typically, of course there's more than that, but what is typically what I see as applications that we can use here and now, it is really pattern recognition. Now, everyone in the business can think about where do I have pattern recognition. A few examples, the most obvious one for all of us doing B2C, it's the question what product a customer might want to have. So that is nothing else than seeing what products do I get in terms of uptake when I offer versus what products do I not get sold when I offer. It's a typical pattern recognition problem. I can do that. I can do this with more people, and I can get better and better, and so that my recommendation becomes more and more relevant. Second pattern recognition that we see today is voice. So if you talk about all the bots and all these things, there's nothing else than basically saying that there's a certain kind of acoustic, and there's a certain set of sentences that are being trained, and a result of it should trigger a certain action. So again, the third one is on image recognition or even video recognition. I might have some problem where I want to, let's say, read a letter, or I want to analyze a video where I want to maybe have an alarming system plugged to it and say if there's something not moving or something is moving, please trigger an alarm. Again, it's nothing else than pattern recognition. So I think largely, if you talk about AI, simplify, think about, and that's what we do, where do we have this kind of laborious task of recognizing a certain pattern, which easily we can give to our computer to solve for us. Very simple. Second part in terms of AI, which is coming now in the organizations, I'm sure you have also many of those things involved, is robotic automation. That's again an area where we look across all our processes, accounts receivable, accounts payable, all these nice things where some numbers have to be reconciliated. And I say, do I have to have a person sitting there and doing it all day and night and taking days and weeks and maybe making a mistake? Or do I employ a kind of a robotic automation piece that's even not AI, I would say. It's just an automation of some certain tasks which might employ some cognitive, but actually the cognitive, again, might be just reading a letter or casting a PDF into a machine-readable piece. Again, it's more pattern recognition combined with a rules-based engine. So I think bringing it down, if you ask in terms of Sri Lanka, everywhere, not Sri Lanka, everywhere, these things are omnipresent and everyone can do it today and now.
Just to add, the way that we are looking at AI is mainly looking at how do we convert the tacit knowledge that we have in the organization into something intelligent. So it's not only numbers in your system, it can be images, it can be certain decisions that a highly skilled person would make. And that's another perspective to look at it. So the data might be hidden in the product as well. It doesn't need to be in the form of information systems.
Here's something I think that links back also to what Jehan was talking about. You talked about how you got around regulators when the cost of B2C shipments were proving to be onerous, completely unviable in the existing system, right? Also, I mean, so this a question on similar lines that come to Nazeem is FriMi has digitized the customer onboarding without face-to-face. Has the regulator approved this? Did it require conversations with regulators?
Okay, interesting question and a timely question. So what really took place was we were experimenting with various onboarding and KYC processes. What we did was we brought in technology like phrase recognition, biometrics, and all of that, and incorporated all of that into the app. But along the way, I mean, the regulators told us this is not good enough. You'll need to go back to physical KYC. So what we do now is actually, I call it phygital. It's a combination of digital and physical. So we are in discussion with the regulators all the time and actually presenting to them the case of digital KYC being actually better than physical KYC. So to answer the question, yes, we're using a combination of digital and physical at the moment.
Right. I'm just following up also, Nazeem. I mean, we touched on this perhaps, but you come from a highly regulated industry because you're often dealing with other people's money. Most of your business relies on other people's money, more than shareholder money. How do you, and that's resulted in a certain approach, a certain culture, a certain aversion to risk, or a certain approach to risk. Did you have to sort of change mindsets to be doing what you're doing successfully? I mean, how do you build a vibrant sort of business around digitizing the fundamentals of a bank in a culture like that is typical of a bank?
So basically, a couple of things here. So FriMi as a platform sits on top of the banking infrastructure. So your money is safe, it goes into the bank, sits in a bank account, a savings account, and is regulated by the regulator and have to go through all the checks and balances that any bank has to go through. So coming to your second question, so what we've done is we've innovated on top of the bank's infrastructure. Very simply, we built FriMi on top of it. And I think the decision was made by the board and senior management of the bank that it needed new thinking, new people. So what they've done is this, move this to be operated independently. And, we are attracting very good talent in terms of all different areas. We have hardly any bankers in FriMi. We have a very young team, ready to innovate, and they've given us the liberty to try and fail. We know half of the things that we will try will not come right. So that's the luxury FriMi has at the moment.
Right. Ramesh, you come from a very large corporation. You have your own customers. JKIT has its own customers, but also you're part of this huge ecosystem. You're part of this huge conglomerate. Is that process challenging in such an environment?
I think so, because I think as much as in a bank, in a conglomerate with a board with more than 10 independent directors, obviously, it's obviously challenging to justify when you spend money and you don't have real results. I think one of the things which has worked for us is in terms of our current chairman, who was passionately involved in driving digitization. It started about 4 years back. We've kind of ingrained that whole thing into the organization with the digitization committee, the John Kisek's Open Innovation Program, where now we are funding about 7 startups. We're incubating them. And we're also accelerating to see whether those startups also could kind of feed off us so that we also kind of rub on their kind of thinking into the organization. So I think obviously, not to say there are no challenges, but I think we're overcoming it in a different way with the ecosystems and stuff.
Jehan, you talked about failure and the freedom to fail, the budget to try things out, stuff like that, right? And there's a question following on from that. And can you shed some light where some failures had been put into perspective? Can you put some failures into perspective, basically, for later success with an example, a real world example?
So even this whole B2C piece, it took about 2.5 years for us to crack it. We experimented for a while, but it didn't commercially make sense. So then we parked it for a moment, and then we took it out again when we felt that it can be done. Some other imaging technologies that we used, again, about 2 years ago to identify defects. We spent a lot of money on that, but still it didn't hit the real quality that we were expecting as well. So then we just stop it. Because again, people might say digital imaging is a technology that you can use wherever your eyes are being used. So we tried it, but it didn't work. So we just have to stop it. So maybe when AI in terms of imaging is advanced further, we will take it out again.
How soon do you think it will be when you can be delivering that personalized garment to somebody? Somebody's buying it on Amazon or whatever platform, and you're delivering a personalized garment. It's cut to fit, or it's unique.
From an aesthetic point of view, I think it's very closer to realization. But when it comes to your fit, it would be still challenging to do it at a scale that would be meaningful for the organization as well. But aesthetic-wise, yes.
Right. Question, okay, this is a general question. What attitudes do you look for in people, talent, when forming a team? How can a smaller business get into the digital transformation journey, when they have maybe potentially people-related challenges? Can you elaborate on this? Can anybody take this on?
I think one of the things probably, I think when we started off initially, we had data scientists who were crowdsourced. Right? We had a data scientist who was working out of California, whom we kind of, first time, I think we got to fight with HR as well to get into crowdsourcing contract where we kind of paid him by the day. Right? So I think talent is there. So it's important for you to understand what you need and source it kind of in a way that it makes sense for you. Because obviously you may not have all the cutting edge talent in Sri Lanka. And we got to stop thinking that all the talent has to come from Sri Lanka in today's context.
Because at the end of the day, you want to get it done, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do with the talent that you have. You need to bring in people who has that level of mental agility to know what we want and also scout for the right partners to work with as well. Because at the end of the day, the business is not going to wait till we figure it out. And that's why building that partner ecosystem in these technologies is a key competency that we are telling our teams as well. If you don't look around, you don't culturally fit within us.
I wanted to give 2 points, if I may. One is the VC industry. Typically, if you look at how do they invest money into companies, obviously a big part of it is the whole question: does the idea scale, and will I be able to even make money if it works? However, there is another very important factor. If you ask those VC people, maybe there are some in the room, I don't know, and they look for the team. Now, Vinod Khosla is one of those more successful VC people. He has written a very short note, and he calls it gene pool engineering, interestingly. And if you read through what he really has found in his career in terms of what is the signature of a successful team, the answer that he has found is it has to be a mix. It has to be a mix of skills which obviously all have to be around what I ultimately want to achieve. So if I want to do a software product, I need to have developers, I need to have QA people, I need to have UX people, I need to have whatever product managers. But it has to be a skill mix. Remember what I said earlier in terms of the atomization and the cross-functional team, but that is almost a no-brainer. The second, what he found is it has to be also ideally a seniority mix. So he found that you can't just have basically very experienced people and you believe that they're going to be the most successful. Likewise, it's maybe also a bit risky to say you only have the young people and exclusively. So it's about mixing what he calls the gene pool, gene of basically the project people that are part of a team. So that's the one data point I want to give, and it's interesting to read that paper if you look it up. The second element I can recommend to look at, unless you have done it already, that's a very timely, lengthy, scientific, almost like scientific study that McKinsey Global Institute has done, MGI. You can also look it up. I think it was 2018 this year. And they look at the future of workforce generally. Now again, there's a topic that so many people discuss and others as well, but they really scientifically look at what is the future of the skills that we have today as compared to what we need in about a few years from now. And no surprise, and I think we talked about it in the earlier discussions, the whole notion about creativity, the whole notion about analytics, but also the notion about being IT savvy clearly will dominate, and there is an undersupply in the global market and certainly an undersupply in our market here. However, there are skills which are going to be replaced, and there's also no secret, which are more those ones that I mentioned in terms of being a bit more labor intensive, being a bit more repetitive, being a bit more, I would call it pattern recognition type of work, which will be sooner or later replaced by either bots or just some AI system that is there. These two data points I want to leave.
Here's a question that may be relevant to the both of you, okay? In your digital journey, how involved is the board? Do you, as CDO or CIO, get a board seat? If not, how often do you engage the board and the C-suite? How much power have you in driving the transformation? I mean, talk to us about your individual roles at JK and JKH and MAS. How do you relate to this?
I think it makes it easy if you start with the wider purpose of the organization, because then you're resonating with everyone in the business. So that's why we took that route, because end of the day, we are using digital technology and the digitalization of things to ensure that everyone within the organization is successful, and it comes down from a long-range plan within the organization as well. So it's not a kind of an isolated journey that we're taking. So that's why I started off saying it's not about a list of projects that we just want to do because we like doing it. It should be tied into the wider purpose of the organization and the long-range plan of the organization, because then you get that kind of buy-in. So from an engagement point of view, I sit with the chairman every month to go through things that we're doing in different aspects of the digital strategies. And also within each of the business units, because MAS is structured in a way that there's a central function as well as a collection of business units. So we take part in their leadership meetings and ensure that we kind of give an update in terms of the projects that we're doing with the business units as well. So as long as it kind of helps them to achieve their strategic imperatives, I think that's where I think it has made it easy for us.
I think because it's not about a single person driving digital, right? It's at John Keells, we've taken a view that each of the CEOs has to be the person who drives digital. So from that point of view, we got a digitalization committee, which is chaired by the chairman, which I am a member of. So our whole philosophy is, as I said, to look at the soft aspects in terms of ensuring the infrastructures are getting built properly, the skill sets which are required. So we launched STEMS program, the Science, Technology, Engineering, Maths program last year, because we felt that we need to have these guys incubate in the business rather than having as a center of excellence, so that there is a cross-pollination of those skills and thought processes accordingly. So it's not about, as I said, one person wheeling the sword and saying, hey, it's my mandate to drive digital. I think it should be everyone's mandate to drive digital. Because, as I said, digital is an imperative. It's not an option. So today, I think every business has a CFO, right? So today, if data is so important, why don't we have a chief data officer in every business? Right? It's that important. So I don't think it's about abdicating this to a single person saying, hey, you're the guy who should be driving this. It's about how each of us, in what we do, can add a quotient to enhance the digital quotient of the organization.
Nazeem, following up on something we were discussing just a minute ago, you were discussing just a minute ago, and here's a question, I'm suspecting it's from a banker. Can you explain why you think digital KYC or know your customer would be better than physical KYC? Is that the case?
It's a good question, actually, once again, but I don't really want to get into conflict, but I'll tell you the things that makes digital KYC better than physical KYC. Look at a branch. You have customers walking in, you have a teller, and somebody comes in to open an account. He gives you an ID. Look at the ID. This is an ID that has been taken when you were 18 years. Can you actually recognize the person in the ID and who has walked in? Very difficult. That's physical KYC. So what digital does is we embedded technology to actually, make the decision-making process much better. I really don't want to go into much more detail on that matter.
Okay, because you have to deal with regulators in uncomfortable meetings. Okay. All right. Raina, your business, I mean, we've been sort of, there's a theory that the telecom business is a dump pipe business. You are carrying data of others who are offering over-the-top services, essentially, and really they're making the money. You're carrying the data. Netflix is making the money, for instance, or Netflix is acquiring customers, building relationships, stuff like that. Okay, how does Dialog approach this? Because broadly speaking, you could take the view that, hey, you're being commoditized. The business of telecom is being commoditized. You're being pushed right down to the bottom. How does a big business respond to that challenge?
Yeah, so I've started my career, when was it, in the 90s, and this question has been consistently coming up since the last, I think, 20 years. Very good question. I see it as a house, or I think we see it as a house, whereby you could think about the services like the mobile payment, the banking, the health services, communication services, maybe education services, the business services that we all use, sitting on top of a fundamental infrastructure. And I think it is fair to say that if you want to have those services without a fundamental infrastructure, it will be a problem. Even to an extent where people like GSMA, which is the industry association, see a clear correlation between countries that have a very good telco digital infrastructure and the GDP. So I think fair to say that as a country, we have to rely on a solid, ubiquitous, high quality, high bandwidth, and reliable infrastructure for all our digital services in our businesses as well as in our private lives. Now, looking at that basis infrastructure, you could call it dump, but if you look a little closer, you will realize that this is extremely high technology infrastructure that we have to put in place. As I mentioned briefly, the last 2 years I was in India building a new player, a digital telco, which had the luxury of being without legacy. All of us, typically we have a lot of legacy. If you build something new, like FriMi, the benefit is you can start from scratch. We have been able in India with Reliance Jio to completely disrupt the market for mainly the reason of being so innovative, so lean and so digital throughout. All the infrastructure, all the processes, Everything was done to scale. And so these learnings, I think we are taking in other telco operators, certainly in Axiata and Dialog, to make sure that the cost to serve the customer is kept at an absolute minimum while we can reinvest maximally our funds into innovation such as currently 4G, and already we are implementing 5G so that the businesses and people as their private life can enjoy, I think, the digital infrastructure, which is the basis for all what we discussed today.
Okay, there is this general question, and I think as we go to a close, let's see if we can slightly stretch this topic. It's about female employee engagement in digital strategy and operations. We have all men on stage. There was talk in the morning, or there was references even in the morning to the poor female participation in the Sri Lankan economy. What do you gentlemen think? Are we losing a trick here by, if female participation is so poor across the economy anyway, is it even worse in digital transformation? And are we losing a trick here?
Is it the question about people getting involved in the technology side of things?
Are you losing something in the technology?
Because I feel digital is a better platform to make it inclusive for women as well, right? Because today, I think we have a situation where we say our work starts at 9, stops at 5. In the digital world, it's a 24/7 clock, right? So if a mother chooses to work in the night or flexi hours, I think the digital platform today gives you that opportunity. I think organizations should be leveraged that. Today, flexi hours, all of that is a possibility, and technology has enabled that. And how many organizations are leveraging it, I'm not too sure, because that could be a huge opportunity to bring the equality.
Does anybody also want to address the female participation rates in digital strategy setting, in operations at a high level? Is it poor? Are we losing something out there?
I can comment on what FriMi is. Out of my senior management team, 70% are female, actually.
Okay.
From our perspective, to add to the round, clearly the notion of having an integrated and cross-functional, cross-skilled team definitely applies, and there's even research behind it to mixing the team also from a gender perspective. In our case, we have very strong board members which are females, which without, I think, we would have not the same success that we have. And in fact, before I came, Sandra, who is our Chief Customer Officer, has been initiating and leading the digital transformation initiative. So in our case, even a female is leading the whole digital transformation. So it clearly shows there isn't any, I think, hurdle or difference. And it's even, as you say, an opportunity by having digital technology available to everyone, wherever and whenever he or she might want to work.
So let's begin wrapping up. And since you have the mic, Reina, any final thoughts? Take a minute at most. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, so again, I come back to my initial statement, not a simple answer in terms of digital transformation. I don't think we are at a stage where we have to raise awareness in terms of the importance of digital, in terms of the importance of embracing the power of the technology, in terms of using analytics. I think there we are all beyond, much beyond. I think now it's more about really applying and taking the first step. And if I leave one thought, and again, speaking by experience, start small. So there isn't a point anymore that you have to run a digital transformation across the entire organization. If you can, it's very good. If you can't, no problem, start small. We have started with a couple of areas. One specific area was the customer-facing area, where we have said, look, we don't want the customer to always be relying on an agent. If somebody wants to have an agent, he or she can. If I want to have a self-serve mentality, please, I want to have an easy way to subscribe a service or to change anything that I want to change. So we have launched a new self-care application called My Dialog, which I think from the feedback that we are getting is fairly good. We are still improving. Day and night we are improving. I'm running this beta program where even internally we are getting day and night feedback from even our own beta customers. New features are tested all the time. But I think start small, we have done it, then we go further. We are now digitizing the retail, we are digitizing the HR, we are going piece by piece. So if you don't want to do everything at the same time, which might be a bit too much, start small, it will be good because those learnings and the successes will transpire to the other areas which might be a little less reluctant in the beginning.
In your closing comments, Nazeem, also try to address for us what the response in the market has been to what you've launched. Is it, what's growth like? You know, how many transactions a month? I don't know what you can share, but give us a sense.
I'll try and share what I can. So we've been in the market just over a year. We've just crossed 100,000 downloads. All key indicators, transaction numbers, transaction value, and active customers are growing between 10 and 15% every month. So from a larger scheme of things, we're doing very well, but we're still at the beginning of the race. For me, honestly, we call ourselves a digital bank. In 2 years, I don't know what we will call ourselves. Just to give you some context to the disruption that's happening across the globe, if you take 15 years back, look at the biggest companies in the world by market cap. You had energy companies, you had banks. You fast forward 15 years, look at the biggest companies in the world by market cap. You have the Googles, you have the Amazons, you have the Facebooks. There's one thing common between these companies. What is it? They're all platform companies. So platform companies are taking over the world. So from a high-level vision to what FriMi should be, only thing I know is we want to connect 20 million people or go much as possible. So we're now trying to adjust and maneuver and evolve into different things based on the traction that we see.
Yeah, I think I will probably echo in terms of what they've said. Even from a John Key's point of view, what we're trying to build is a common platform, an ecosystem, where people could kind of really collaborate, co-innovate, co-create. Because ultimately, we will never own the entire value chain in the future. So we got to identify areas where we are strong and consider our efforts in terms of making that more efficient and effective, and then collaborate to deliver the entire value.
From my point of view, it's mainly to the B2B players. We always would think that this is not happening to us because it's always in the consumer front. Don't be in denial. There's much opportunity that you could play because the physical movement of things can be changed the way that you want as well. So there's an opportunity there even in the B2B manufacturing world.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think that was a great conversation. Can we have a round of applause for the panel, please, ladies and gentlemen? And also something, token of appreciation from the Ceylon Chamber.